All right, we're getting the green light, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar titled The Top 5 Data Conversion and Authoring Pitfalls and How to Avoid Them, presented by JANA. For those of you who might not be familiar with JANA, JANA is a technical publication services company which was established here in San Antonio, Texas in 1973. For 43 years, our core business has been the development, management, and delivery of quality technical documentation, and we have a long history in creating and converting and managing structured data. My name is Joe Storbeck, and I have the pleasure of co-presenting today's webinar with a fellow JANA employee, Stephon Johns.
Hello, everyone.
Stephon and I will spend the next 30 minutes or so pointing out 5 of the most common data conversion and authoring pitfalls that we have come across and giving you tips on how you can avoid them. Before we get started, let's give you a little background about the two of us. Stephon, why don't you go start first and share with us a little bit about your background.
Alrighty. My name is Stephon Johns, and I'm the Director of Technology Development at JANA. I have a bachelor's degree in Business Administration from Texas A&M University, San Antonio, and I have over 10 years experience working with various XML technologies and methodologies, including DITA. My expertise in the area of developing corporate content management strategies and building customized publishing solutions using DITA and other XML technologies. I am also involved in developing and hosting technical training courses and workshops, both internally here at JANA and for our customers throughout North America.
Okay, thank you, Stephon. As for me, as I mentioned, my name is Joe Storbeck, and I am a Senior Structured Data Analyst at JANA. I've been a technical communications professional for over 30 years, and I have an extensive background in the development and management of structured data. I currently serve on 3 OASIS DITA committees, the DITA Technical Committee, the TechCom and Adoption Subcommittee, and the Lightweight DITA Subcommittee. In the past, I have led documentation teams for a variety of companies, including AIG, Citibank, and IBM. I was working at IBM during the time that they were developing and rolling out the DITA standard, and I worked directly with the team developing the DITA architecture.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Here's a quick overview of today's webinar agenda. We expect the webinar to last a total of around 30 minutes. We will try to keep the last 5 minutes or so free for answering any questions. You will notice that there is a box in the attendee panel that you can use anytime to submit a question. Our production team here will collect the questions as we go, and Joe and I will try to answer as many of those as we can before we close. Okay, let's get into it. The first pitfall that we want to talk about is a mistake that is easy to make, not looking ahead in the process. We've all done it. We've all been guilty of getting ahead of ourselves and focusing in too closely on the aspects of the project that we are most interested in and ignoring the aspects that we dread. But it's important to make sure that, especially during the initial planning stages, you keep the big picture in mind.
I think that a good way to frame this concept is to use a quote from General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe during World War II. He famously stated, "I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." This might seem like an odd quote from the man who was responsible for planning and leading the successful invasion of Nazi-occupied France, which in itself involved one of the largest and most complicated invasion and breakout plans in history. But what General Eisenhower meant was that although plans will inevitably change as the process moves along, good planning requires looking ahead. The more complicated the plan, the more important it becomes to keep the main objectives in mind. You must be able to properly identify your goals as well as the milestones you will need to reach in order to accomplish them. You have to engage in risk analysis early and often, because engaging in those types of careful consideration will help you to anticipate difficulties and empower your team to overcome them. But even good plans are just plans until you put them into action. The action plan for a successful DITA implementation campaign will look different for every company, But here's a basic set of steps showing the path from data analysis to publish. You can see when you look over the entire plan, there are a few steps which immediately grab your attention. Steps that seem like they would be fun to participate in, like choosing software or designing style sheets for some people, I guess. But there are other steps that we would all prefer to ignore, like analyzing our legacy data. This illustrates, though, how important it is to make sure that you keep the entire process in mind as you are developing your company's action plan.
By the way, for any of you who might not be familiar with the high-level workflow steps that are outlined on this slide, keep an eye on your inbox. The next DITA webinar that JANA will be presenting is titled DITA Workflow 101, and in that webinar we will cover each of these areas in more depth. For this discussion, though, we are simply trying to make the point that although the number of steps and the specific order of the steps will look different for every company, it is always a good idea to keep the entire process in mind as you are planning each step.
Okay, when your company is ready to start putting together a DITA implementation plan, there are questions that you and your team should be able to answer before going forward. Questions such as, what does our existing library look like and how is it put together? Or what do we want our final product to be? A PDF, online HTML, an information center? Will the documentation be shipped with the product or will it be hosted on our website? Will the customer have access to the data via our website or do they need direct behind the firewall access? Have we determined how we are going to structure our file source directories? That is, will images be a separate directory or a subdirectory of text files? Or will they be merged with text file directories? Will other departments such as training or marketing be using your documentation as source? Or will they be providing additional source?
Of course, these are not fun questions to ponder, and there are millions of them. But if you start out by framing the project properly and plan your approach from the beginning with the entire front-to-back process in mind, you'll be much better off for it, and you'll thank yourself later.
The team that puts the plan together should have defined roles and responsibilities. In our experience, an effective team would include an information architect who conducts all DITA and topic-based writing, training, manages the conversion process, evaluates when and how documents are to be converted, decides how to mix book and topic-based documentation, and determines where and how topics should be presented. Of course, you're going to want a writer who will create pre-conversion outlines, track IDs and file names, which are important for fixing broken links, run conversion scripts, and perform post-conversion cleanup. You'll also want an editor who reviews topic-based outlines before conversion is attempted, provides guidance to writers during the conversion process. And you'll also need a tool support and development person, one who helps writers with tagging issues, debugs build problems, takes care of style sheet issues, and creates the conversion scripts.
Here are a few quick tips to summarize. There will always be a number of questions that simply can't be answered before breaking ground, but get as many of them answered as possible before your company starts its DITA conversion or authoring project. If you don't know what questions you should be asking, when we get to the last slide, write down our contact information and give us a call. Joe and I have been doing this for a long time, but if you know the questions to ask, answer them honestly and use them to properly frame the project right from the start. Then, once you've got a good plan established, stick to it. Make sure that everyone involved knows the plan and make sure that there are safeguards in place to ensure that everyone is following it. And most importantly, be ready to adjust the plan as needed. There will always be a need to make adjustments to the plan as you go. Be ready for it and tackle the issues as they come.
Okay, moving on. We briefly mentioned this next pitfall when discussing the previous one, but we want to make sure that we really get the point across on this one. Pitfall number 2, letting the software tail wag the data dog. So many companies fall into this trap. In this case, the proper path appears to be counterintuitive in several ways. When looking at the project from the start and looking forward, it might seem like an obvious first step would be to choose a software package and let the software drive the conversion of the data. But if you don't know your data, that is, if you don't really understand your data and how it fits into your overall DITA strategies, you lack the tools that you need in order to choose the right software packages to suit your requirements. And choosing the wrong software package can have disastrous, long-term, budget-busting effects on your DITA project. Let's take a look at how we can prevent ourselves from letting the tail wag the dog.
Many times, companies don't fall into this pit. They jump voluntarily because they are convinced that choosing the right software can actually solve their data problems. And, of course, this is an idea that software companies and vendors would gladly reinforce and perpetuate. The idea that there is one perfectly suited all-star software package that can take all of your problem data and magically transform it into a harmonious and easy-to-manage data set is so enticing that it's easy to believe. I mean, it sounds plausible, right? And if it's true, it would mean major time savings throughout the course of the project. But, like with most other things that sound too good to be true, this idea is too good to be true. But there is good news. There is a way to ensure that you choose the right software package, the one that would be best suited to meet your project needs.
That's right. Arguably the most important step in the DITA conversion process is the analysis of your existing data. Trying to short-circuit this step, or worse, skipping it altogether, will lead to all sorts of process issues downstream. In reality, there is no shortcut for performing a thorough analysis of your data when converting to DITA, even if you are converting to DITA from another structured data language or convention.
The time that your conversion team spends examining your data at the beginning of the project will not only save you time in the long run, but it will also allow you to make an informed decision when it comes to choosing your CMS and or other authoring software. You will be able to more easily identify the software packages that best fulfill your needs and project requirements, and the ones that are best suited to take advantage of the unique data set. The main point that we want to make here is, do your data analysis up front, then use the information that you gather to make a decision on what technologies to invest in. If you do this, then you have the dog wagging the tail.
Here are a few related tips to help you avoid this particular pitfall. When searching for the right tools, don't pay too much attention to the bells and whistles offered by the various software packages. They may look enticing, but when it comes right down to it, does the clean demo data resemble your data at all? Or is it overly simplified for the purpose of the demo? Make sure that you know your data before you start your software search, and use that knowledge to determine which bells and whistles really would be beneficial, and identify the ones that you need and can actually use versus the ones that will do absolutely nothing for you or your company. After all, many of the features are add-ons that cost money. Knowing which ones will be useful and which ones will not will save you time, effort, and money, not to mention frustration in the long run.
That's a good point, Joe. Another thing to remember is that although XML is intended to be software and hardware independent, software companies would naturally try to get you to use their tools throughout the conversion, authoring, and publishing process. When looking for a CMS, be aware of software packages that limit you to using a proprietary XML editor and or publishing tool. A flexible CMS that is neutral towards the tools you decide to implement is the better option for most companies. On a related note, don't get locked into the use of one style sheet language, that is, XSLT or FOSSI. Publication flexibility is one of the key benefits of using DITA. The ability to remain flexible will leave you with options that will simply not be available to you if you lock yourself into one language. Lastly, some DITA editing tools are purely based on aesthetically pleasing web forms. While the form may look nice, is user-friendly, and is technically DITA compliant, you'll be limited to which DITA elements you have access to. You may also be bound to additional charges if you decide to add more functionality to the form in the future. Some tools are simply add-ins for common word processors that just piggyback on an author's familiarity with the software. They have created add-ins to support authoring DITA topics, but there's a danger in using these add-ons. Like all other word processors, you have the ability to type anything you want into a particular element, regardless of whether or not the input is relevant to that particular element.
Okay, pitfall number 3, expecting too much automation. It seems like automated conversion to DITA should be a breeze. This chunk of text goes here, that piece of data goes there, a place for everything and everything in its place. Easy, right? Not so much for one main reason. We are converting book-based content to a topic-based standard. Most legacy documents detail tasks and concepts related to entire products or systems with all of the relevant information published in any number of chapters within a book. DITA, on the other hand, breaks content down into reusable chunks that make up the individual components of a product or system, which can then be assembled and reassembled in any number of output formats, including as a book if you wish, but also as displayed as a web page or a mobile app. This is what makes topic-based authoring so powerful. In large part, these two methods of creating, storing, and publishing technical documentation are incompatible, and information stored using the book method cannot be easily translated to DITA. In theory, after an automatic conversion, you would have a DITA-compliant topic, but it is useless unless the data is chunked properly and has intelligence added. Automated conversion routines can cover a lot of the ground between point A and point B, but adding the requisite intelligence to the topic requires human intervention. So don't be fooled.
Most conversion tools would tout a holistic DITA conversion. This may be true if you simply want to transfer your legacy text to boilerplate DITA topics, but to take advantage of the main benefits of DITA, such as data reuse or output flexibility, the conversion requires an injection of human intelligence, that is, to make a determination regarding issues such as how the data should be chunked, what attributes need to be added, what metadata should be added. These are just a few examples of the characteristics of a useful DITA topic that no machine intelligence can recognize or formulate with as much accuracy as a human writer. Automated conversion will also typically struggle with how to properly identify and categorize IDs and keys. IDs and keys are unique identifiers for elements that you may want to cross-reference later. For example, tables or figures whose unique ID is referenced in one or more paragraphs. These types of references are difficult to automate in any useful or meaningful way. At the very least, references to the IDs will have to be verified by a writer to ensure that there is a proper link between the various elements. In some cases, or in most cases, automation can get you close, but even the most accurate conversions will require human intervention before starting the conversion, and especially after the automated process is complete.
Don't expect graphics to be easily converted in most cases either. Graphics are notoriously difficult to handle during a conversion process. Most legacy documents have been maintained in desktop publishing formats that require the graphics to be embedded into the file itself. In many cases, the native file for the graphic doesn't exist any longer or has been assigned a random name that is not easily identifiable. This makes automation even more difficult as desktop publishing systems typically do not store the name of the graphic. In keeping with the one file used many times DITA paradigm, native files for graphics must be present so that they can be referred to. Linking the graphic to a DITA topic requires either cutting and pasting the graphic from the document, which can result in a significant loss of resolution, or searching for and finding the original native file, a task which can be difficult and time-consuming and oftentimes impossible. Some of these tasks can be made more efficient with the use of machine intelligence, but all of them will require human intervention.
Okay, pitfall number 4, migrating too much data. When converting your content to DITA, it is rarely necessary to convert all of your data into unique DITA topics. So where do we draw the line on how much data to convert? Let's find out. Making an informed decision on how much content to migrate or convert really boils down to one thing. How much of that data can be reused? According to a leading CMS developer, their product allows their customers to realize an average of 71% content reuse. One of the customers that they documented maintains a data set of almost 230,000 topic-based components. Of those, only 46,000 or so are unique. The rest of their library is made up of over 182,000 reused components. That's an 80% reuse rate. So the question becomes, if 20% of your data can be used to build 100% of your published content, why would you bother converting the other 80%? Their answer is, you wouldn't. Likewise, at JANA, we recently had a customer, a semiconductor manufacturing company, that had always used Microsoft Word to create their data sheets. They had a separate Word document for each of the hundreds of various chips they manufacture. After evaluating their library of data sheets, we determined that each of the components had some level of similarity with some, or in some cases all, of the other components. And much of the content in the data sheets could be shared. Applying the basic reuse concept, JANA authors created a single reusable framework document that contained all of the commonalities throughout the component library, and using DITA conditional processing, also known as profiling, we were able to convert all of the variations present within each of the various components in the framework document. This drastically reduced the volume of data that the company was required to maintain.
As with all of the other pitfalls, there are a number of questions that you should ask yourself at the beginning of the process, which, when answered, will help you to properly define the scope of your data migration effort. Answering the questions that we have outlined here will get you moving in the right direction and help you to frame the scope of your conversion effort. By this part of the process, you will have already performed a thorough analysis of your data, and you will be able to make at least a high-level determination of how much potential there is for reuse within your data set. Of course, content reuse varies from organization to organization depending on how its content is written and structured. And this will change not only from company to company, but from industry to industry. So don't count on being able to reproduce the reuse rates that are touted by software salespeople and other companies. Just like all the other steps involved, creating and implementing an effective reuse strategy is vital to a successful data conversion. Make sure that you closely examine all of the factors involved and lay out your plan using the knowledge that you gain from your investigation.
And that leads us to the fifth and final pitfall that we're going to discuss, not understanding the reasons for DITA. Along with reuse, there are a lot of other benefits to using the DITA standard for management and publishing of your technical data. Taking advantage of and actually realizing those benefits, though, requires your data architects and writers to understand much more than the nuts and bolts of DITA processes and procedures. In order to take full advantage of the benefits of DITA, each of the people on your development team have to truly understand the reasons that the DITA standard was developed in the first place and the methodologies behind DITA that drive the innovation.
A common mistake that many organizations make when they're putting their DITA implementation plans into practice is not properly training their writers. Now, I'm not talking about training the writers to use DITA tags. The need for that kind of training is obvious. The kind of training that I'm talking about is making sure that their team understands the limitations of book-based publishing and the advantages inherent in topic-based publishing methods. Everyone involved can benefit from the advantages offered by DITA if they will simply embrace it, but unfortunately not everybody does. DITA can seem intimidating to writers at first. When I was teaching DITA to writers at IBM, one woman told me that she wasn't going to learn DITA. She told me that she would retire before she had to go through that. And she did. There are a lot of differences between writing books and writing topics. Some of those differences are obvious, but some of them can be very subtle. But once people take the time to understand and start recognizing the clear advantages that DITA offers, adaptation is relatively simple. Topic-based documentation is tailor-made for writers who want to get their point across as efficiently as possible, and for users who don't have a lot of time to read. Topic-based documentation gets to the point. Each topic answers a single question, is ideally only a few paragraphs long, and sticks to one subject. This not only makes topics easier to read, but also easier to review.
We talked a bit earlier about how book-based publishing and topic-based publishing are largely incompatible. Topic-based content does not conform to the types of content flow which are common to the traditional page-based concept, and breaking the page-based paradigm is usually the most difficult concept for traditionalists to overcome. For example, we had a customer that wanted to convert their manuals to DITA but wanted to maintain the existing page breaks. This begged the question, why are you moving to DITA? We also had a customer that requested an intentionally left blank statement at the bottom of every page that had a significant amount of white space at the bottom of that page. Requests for these types of book-based formatting holdovers are an indication that the decision makers within an organization have not fully embraced the concept of DITA, even though they have rightfully decided that DITA is the best option for their company. It has been our experience that when writers are well trained in topic-based authoring, they will come to appreciate the benefits of DITA, even traditionalist book-based devotees.
In some ways, this is the easiest pitfall to avoid. Before attempting to train your writers and editors to write in DITA, start training them to think in DITA. Someone who truly understands the DITA architecture should be able to clearly explain the benefits and train a group to recognize and take advantage of them. Once they begin to grasp the concepts behind DITA and topic-based authoring, your group will begin to recognize for themselves where the bones are buried, so to speak, and how to take full advantage of the benefits of using the DITA spec. Well, that concludes our discussion of the top 5 DITA conversion and authoring pitfalls. Let's see if we've had any questions submitted. Okay. Doesn't look like we've got any. So let's close this out. On behalf of Stephon Johns and the rest of our webinar production team, I would like to thank you for attending today's webinar, the top 5 DITA conversion and authoring pitfalls and how to avoid them. As you can see, we have any number of ways that you can reach us if you have any questions. We would be happy to answer any questions that you have at any time, including questions that might pop up in the future. And of course, if you need help in authoring or converting DITA topics or training your employees to think and write in DITA, JANA is here to help, because JANA knows data. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.